we on?
The panel you've been waiting for. Virtual reality. I am very emotional about virtual reality. And I got that way because I sat outside the demo room at Web Summit last year, and again at the Consumer Electronics Show this year, at both Oculus and other places. And I watched how people reacted as they came out of the demos. And every single person coming out of the demos used an expletive at Web Summit last year. And so I bought a 360-degree camera and started really studying this field. I went to 20th Century Fox and met with Ted Shilwitz, the futurist there. I've made friends with GoPro's executives and Jaunt and other companies. Went to Rothenberg Ventures, who's investing a lot of stuff in this, and made lots of friends and had quite a few panels over the past few months like this. Most people haven't experienced yet a high-end, recent model headset. How many people have been to like a Valve demo in the last 3 months or an Oculus Rift demo in the last 3 months? So you guys, this is a very advanced audience compared to what most of my audiences are. And which tells you something. People who have not tried it poo-poo it and turn to you and say, why would I ever wear something that looks so dorky to experience a music video or a movie or play a game or something like that? But the minute they get out of a 10-minute demo with Valve or Oculus, they go, okay, I get it. And that's where I want to start out. Let's just set some context for what are the distribution platforms that are coming, and how big do we want to think it's going to be? Because if people don't have headsets, the rest of this panel won't matter, right? But first, let's introduce each other. Maybe spend 20 seconds explaining, or 30 seconds explaining who you are and why you got on this panel.
Yeah. Hi, my name is Dipak Patel. I run a division of Western Digital called G Technology. We focus on media and entertainment, storage solutions, obviously, for content creators. My interest in VR spans beyond just G Technology, where we're interested in just supporting next generation content creators and storytellers, but also personally I'm an investor and investing in a company called Scallie, which is a distribution platform for content creators in the VR space.
I'm Chelsea Mason. I am the digital marketing manager at the Los Angeles Philharmonic. And as some of you may know, we recently launched our own virtual reality app. The app itself was called Orchestra VR, which is available in the Samsung Gear VR store, Oculus Share, and newly on YouTube. And we loaded this app up into a van that was outfitted to look like Walt Disney Concert Hall. And we toured it around Los Angeles for 6 weeks. It was a completely free experience. We brought it around to a lot of underserved communities, a lot of new audiences. It was a really big outreach project for us. And so I'm really excited to be here and tell you more about how we used virtual reality as an audience engagement tool.
Hi, everyone. My name is Laurent Scallie. I'm the founder and CEO of Red Pill. And I have about 24 years of VR experience. I left France at age 24 because I saw the Lawnmower Man, and I said, I'm going to build that. That sounds cool. And through that 24-year span, I started 4 VR companies. The last one built really advanced multi-user VR simulation solutions for the US Army. I had the pleasure to introduce Brendan and Palmer, who started Oculus. And the last 2 years, I essentially had the luxury to be able to focus on the 2 things I love the most. The first, clearly VR. The second, music. And I've put a lot of thoughts as to how do we bring music into the world of VR. And essentially, I'm building a whole analysis, deconstruction, demixing platform to visualize music in an emotionally relevant way. So you can actually see instruments instead of just frequencies. So I can tell you more about that, but that's my background.
Yeah. I'm Robert Scoble. Rackspace asked me to go study the future, which means I do branding And last week I was hanging out with brand people from Anheuser-Busch and Absolute Vodka and Sutter Home Wineries. People with
I'm
big
seeing a
fan-
trend, man.
There's a trend. I'm an alcoholic and I can't drink, so they say, "Oh, you're not going to drink our profits anymore, so
Free
you better
alcohol.
work for us." Right? But I was hanging out with American Airlines and stuff like that too. These brands are very interested in VR because it lets them do a new kind of experiential marketing. We can talk about that later. Siri was launched in my son's bedroom, so I studied people like Laurent, who builds the future. And then I love music. I was at a music festival all weekend, so hang out with cool musicians. So to wrap that up, so let's just talk about distribution. At the bottom end, the New York Times just released 1 million of these Google Cardboard headsets, and Absolute actually took the open source plans and distributed a bunch to their customers, and I'm hearing a lot of that kind of thing. I think you're going to get 15 headsets by the end of next year. It's going to be like the new AOL CD, if anybody remembers those things, right? And in the middle, and there's a whole bunch of mobile-focused ones. Like I should have brought it in, but I have the Merge VR that you put your phone into, and then you can look around. You guys have some Samsung Gear VRs in the front row, and Ion VR has, these are all in the $100 to $200 range. And then at the high end, we have Oculus and Valve and Sony PlayStation VR. Most of the, I'm going to state, most of the insiders I talk to think it's a two-horse race between Oculus and Valve, but Sony's in there too. They have a lot of content. So we might have to buy 3 really expensive headsets just to be cool enough for all the neighborhood kids, right? These are $1,500 systems, right? Because you have to have a PC with a tether to a headset, and soon you're going to need the controllers. And I visited Oculus Rift's headquarters at Facebook, and they put it on me, and they gave me 2 controllers in my hands. And a guy went next door and put on his, and I could see him across the table. And I could punch him, I could shoot him, I could throw a football at him, I could do an arrow and pluck that. I could play ping pong with him,
Just a
back
little
and
less
forth.
violent.
Violence and all that is fun. But, we can play ping pong. We can manipulate toys. Like they had a toy train on the table, and we could play with that together. So it's mind-blowing, right? When you're in one of these social experiences. You guys have had some of that kind of experience. Tell me, did I lay out the context of the distribution well enough, or are there holes in what I said?
I think there's distribution and then there's consumerization. They're almost 2 separate things. There's fundamentally user experience and all this is kind of being disrupted as we speak. Is it content? Is it gaming? Is it some measure of both?
Yeah.
And how that gets experienced is through a variety of distribution platforms, whether it's software platforms for, most people on the planet don't even know they can do this, right? Let alone putting on a head-mounted display and experiencing it in different ways. So I think, when we think about distribution, there's distribution of content and engaging with that content in new and interesting ways. In terms of consumerization, there's consumerization efforts as it relates to products that are coming out, whether it's the Sony Morpheus or Oculus or HTC stuff or whatever, Samsung Gear VR. I honestly think the fact that the install base for PlayStation is so wide that they may actually have a better chance of going to market with consumer products because, one, they're Sony, and they already have a game platform to go create user experiences. So then the question becomes a big battle between Hollywood and Silicon Valley, and who the fuck knows who's going to win that one, right? Which is content and valuing creative and then valuing innovation. And there's a collision between those 2 that's happening right now.
I think it's important to maybe set a little bit of a stage here. VR, it's the second time that it's coming out. And this time is very different. since the Oculus Kickstarter campaign, right, there's about $870 million that's been invested in a variety of VR companies. There's tons of VR companies being erected every day. There's 200,000 development kits by Oculus alone that have been sold. Those are extraordinary numbers, and there's nothing in the market just yet. Sure, we have predictions. Talking about distribution platform, to address your point, really the game from a hardware perspective is not to sell hardware, is to build a distribution platform. So Valve has 100 million gamers, and they have Steam platform. That's their distribution platforms. That's their competitive advantage. Facebook clearly has quite a bit of an infrastructure, and they're building the Oculus Home, which is the distribution platform for VR content that works with the Oculus head-mounted display. Same with the Gear VR, which is essentially a licensing of Oculus Tech, and you have an Oculus Home for the mobile platform. So that's how the content gets distributed. The cut is typically 70% for the content developers and 30% for the platform, the distribution platform.
It's the iTunes model.
Exactly. So that's kind of, the ground rules. Fundamentally, there's something, there's a few of you that raise your hands about having experienced Vive and the latest Oculus. And that's really important because this is essentially the platforms that cross the threshold of presence. And that's this magic that we're talking about in VR. And unless you've experienced that, there's no words, no video, no articles that can actually tell you what this is, because this is the first experiential medium. For the first time in human history, you're no longer metabolizing information that comes through a book or through a movie or through any other mediums that exist. You are directly perceiving information through your five senses, mainly two for now. And that's really VR. And that is pretty much magical. And certainly when technology reaches that level, it disappears. And so ultimately, the holy grail of VR is the technology goes away, and we naturally interact with digital content, which has very deep ramification in how we communicate and how we learn and how we get entertained, and it's going to ultimately affect us in meaningful ways, I think. And one of the things that I thought was quite interesting is music, which is a highly emotional medium, is not really well represented in the applications that are being developed right now in VR.
Yeah.
And
Explain what you mean by that, because this audience is very interested in what you just said.
I mean, there's clearly gaming is the majority of the applications that are being developed. Although part of 200,
it's the obvious first thing. We want a driving game, a flying game, a shooting game.
There's a bunch of gaming content that's being built, and that's the primary market. There are developers in literally every single industries, from medical to education to defense to architectural to movies to you name it. But one would think that music would be well represented, and there are some really cool stuff that's being done, but it's a small minority.
Now, most of the sizzle reels from John, who makes these cool, really expensive cameras, or NextVR, or even the headset, they all have music. So you're trying to differentiate from capturing a music performance like at Coachella or something with a 360-degree camera and maybe 4 or 8 microphones to something else. Where are you going with this?
Okay, so basically there's 2 types of content for VR, right? You've got the live action content, whether you put a camera and you capture a live environment. And we can talk about that and some of the restrictions and some of the problems. And then you have computer-generated visuals. So it's real time. In the case of presence, there are certain rules. You need to have 90 frames per second. There are certain things that need to happen in order to have this perception of this world that is anchored physically around you. So those are 2 main categories of content. Mainly what I've seen in music-based content has been of the former. You put a camera somewhere and you capture. There's a really interesting piece from Paul and Felix that captured this really intimate moment with this musician in Montreal. And you see him really go through his creation process, and you're in his loft. And that's just really like you're sharing that moment with him. That's really amazing. I'd love to see more of that. Clearly, the presence right now is achieved not in live action, but in CG content, real-time CG content. That's where you cross that threshold of presence. Yeah. And in that world, there's very little that I have seen. There's few things that are interesting. There's a great music visualization like Surge that I like quite a bit. But there's it would be nice to see more efforts.
It seems like you're defining a new art form. I mean, I've been to Coachella and the Sahara Tent, and where you have these LED screens all around you and lasers and surround sound, multi-channel sound, so Skrillex can put sound instrument playing over here and then over here, right? And it's all very enjoyable. But it sounds like you're trying to describe a world that's more like Minecraft, where I build a virtual world and I can make that world react to the music and do things, put video layers on it. Is that where I'm going? And then I'm going to take it to the orchestra because I think she's chomping at the bit to build something like this, right?
I mean, well, if you're asking what I'm building,
yeah.
I'm building a platform that I've never actually talked about. It's the first time that I'm talking about it. But I spent 2 years building this technology that deconstructs stereo into stem in real time and analyze the stem so you can create visuals that are correlated to the actual instrument. So it's a music platform that musicians could create curated experiences. DJs or musicians can do live events and have a visuals that correlated by instruments. Or you could essentially paint with VR by listening to SoundCloud or Pandora because the system would be intelligent enough to kind of separate the information and drive visuals that you could pick from a library. So that's something that's in development. But there's a lot of opportunities, I think, not just from the visual side, but also from the audio side to create very compelling music experience. VR offers positional audio. The visuals can change the perception of the audio. So I think that's a whole open world for music content creators to kind of explore. There's a lot to explore there.
And you built an early kind of experience like this for the orchestra. Are you excited by this? Is this where you're...
I'm super excited about this, and I'm excited about a lot of the other things that I've been seeing in VR and where it's going. For those of you who aren't familiar with what exactly Orchestra VR was, is we took the first 4 minutes of Beethoven's Fifth Symphony, which everybody knows. It's a da-da-da-da, da-da-da-da, like everybody knows this piece. But maybe they've never seen an orchestra perform it. They don't necessarily have that firsthand experience of going to an orchestra. And so we wanted to make an experience that allowed people to do that even if they couldn't make it to Walt Disney Concert Hall. And right now, all you need is YouTube on your phone, at kind of the simplest level to experience this app, which we think is spectacular. But what we really wanted to do was create kind of a heightened sense of what it's like to go to an orchestral concert. And so we set up these fabulous cameras all over Walt Disney Concert Hall in different points. And throughout the experience, it actually moves you throughout the concert hall and puts you in different perspectives that you might never be able to see even if you do attend the concert hall. At one point, you are facing the conductor with the orchestra behind you. But since you've got the virtual reality environment, you can actually turn around and look at the orchestra behind you. You can look up, you can look down at the floor. It's not very interesting there, but you can really kind of get this immersive experience. And then we also laid on top of it these visualizations that, kind of accent the music. But all of this was done over a couple months. It was very labor intensive. And we had to lay that over the video that we shot that we then had to stitch together. And so the prospect of being able to do this in real time is super exciting. And then kind of on the other spectrum, the prospect of being able to simply live stream things is very exciting. We're always looking for new opportunities to engage audiences who might be on the other side of the world, to just get people excited about orchestral music, because for a lot of people, once you get them inside the concert hall to experience it, they're like, oh, wow, I actually do like going to the symphony. A lot of people may not think that until they get into the concert hall. And so virtual reality is a really great opportunity for us to get people into the concert hall at maybe something that's a little more easier for them to get to. You know, downtown LA is not a fun place to try to get to. So that's actually one of the biggest barriers we face. We do all these focus groups. We're talking to potential ticket buyers out in Santa Monica. For those who don't live in LA, depending on traffic, it can take you an hour to get to downtown from Santa Monica. Without traffic, it's like 15, 20 minutes, depending on how fast you're driving. But for a lot of people, they're like, oh yeah, I've been meaning to go to the Phil for the longest time. It's just such a slog to get there. And so this is really an opportunity for us to get this in front of people and get them excited about coming, and then actually get a ticket.
Yeah.
And come experience it.
Absolute Vodka did something very similar, where they took a series of cameras in and filmed Bob Moses. They actually they saw that Bob Moses sold out his concerts, and only a few thousand people could experience a live Bob Moses concert. And so they held a contest for giving away 3 of these Google Cardboard style headsets with Absolute branding on them. And they had 15,000 contestants. They gave away 5,000 of these sets, and they found that the average time spent in this was 19 minutes, which they said was extraordinary for a brand like this to have that kind of engagement with their users. And so they're going to invest in more of these. And I assume you're going to invest in more of these, right?
Absolutely. I mean, and 19 minutes is spectacular. I mean, you look at any, you know, the average for your YouTube analytics and things like that, and or even for those of you uploading content to Facebook, you know, the drop-off rate just goes shoom. And so to hear 19 minutes is just mind-blowing, keeping people engaged in your experience longer, because there is more to see. You know, you're on YouTube, and here's what you can see.
And this isn't even with your phone
And
platform
this
yet.
this is just video.
This
you know?
is just a couple of GoPros, right?
There's a huge value from a brand perspective to actually allow an experience to be shared, and a brand identity to be communicated in a very different way than it currently does. And there's a lot of creativity that I think need to go into that, so that it's not just this blatant banner or this really obvious and obnoxious thing in front of you. It's integrated into the experience, and it carries the messaging of the brand in a lot more profound way without really being in your face. So I think VR offers that opportunity, and especially if you spend 19 minutes somewhere, you're going to have the opportunity to do that.
Last week I talked to Rob Thomas, and he's very excited because he knows most of his fans can't come to a concert, and certainly if they do, they're not in the front row. And so even if you're in the back row, you want to experience the concert this way with GoPro cameras or with Jaunt cameras or whatever. Should we switch to talking about cameras, or do you want to get involved here?
No, I mean, I think in terms of brand engagement, I think you're right. Everybody's looking at how to converge content creation, tastemakers and influencers, and brands, because really the intersection of all those 3 is the opportunity to disrupt business models. And in the end, you know, somebody should be talking about how we make money with this thing, right?
Well, you think of a Taylor Swift fan. You know, I went to one of her concerts, and these 13, 14-year-old girls are really excited about her. And they pay a lot of money. I know one guy who flew from Texas with his daughter and spent thousands of dollars to see this experience. They would sign up for another $300, $400 for a VR subscription to all the rest of our concerts.
And
right?
I think that's really where, you know, if we layer on the amount of kind of opportunities to reinvent rules, that's kind of where we start seeing, right? Reinventing of the very art of storytelling. Now I went from line of sight to full immersion, right? So all of a sudden the director can't be in the shot, right? Distribution, consumerization, all that's being disrupted. But now business models are being disrupted, investment models are being disrupted. So if you look at the litany of companies that are being invested in, quite frankly, there's a kind of a schizophrenic kind of company model that's out there. There's a company that does production, it does platform, it does this, it does innovation, it makes freaking cameras, and holy crap, like where's the actual focus? So, and I think, you know, people are actually just throwing money at those things because we have no idea.
Well, let's talk about cameras because you have a little expertise here. You know, the Jaunt camera has, I think, 18 lenses around it and captures a lot of data. And they're actually putting that data up in the cloud and building a 3D point cast model of the room. That's something they haven't really disclosed too much yet. But these things are starting to build virtual 3D models of where they are so that you can do virtual cameras and you can do replacement of bitmaps and all sorts of fun things as a cinematographer, right?
There's the idea of positional cameras, and then there's also the ability to actually allow you to move around the space, which is some of the stuff that you're talking about, which is fully kind of digitizing the space in full Z depth.
So you can't really move around the space with a live action. So
well, actually, there's a bunch of companies that are being invested in right now. Like there's a company down in LA called Magnopus. They literally are building a freaking holodeck, right? I mean, so you can move around a virtual space. There's this thing called The Void out in Utah, which is an amusement park, which is full VR. I mean, you've probably seen that.
Yeah, I've been to The Void. I know what you're talking about. But
Yeah.
I think it's important to set kind of some technology limitations and understanding. Most of the live action technologies today are 3 degrees of freedom. So you could be 3D or 2D, but it's from a fixed point in space that you're looking around, right? That's 99% of the stuff that you see right now.
Yeah, if you have a Ricoh Theta camera
Yeah.
and you hold it up, you're viewing the world from that point.
There is, you know, whether you have, you know, 1 lens, 20 lens, multiple cameras, that there's all kinds of configuration, but it's the same concept. Ultimately, that has a whole lot of problems. There is an average IPD between the 2 eyes, so there is eye strain, there is stitching issues, there's 3D issues, there's resolution issues because you're unwrapping the entire video from the codec into, you know, essentially a small section that you're seeing and you're blowing that up, so you have about 2.5 times the resolution less than the actual pixel of the screen. Lots of different problems. Ultimately, for live action, you want 6 degrees of freedom. You want something that's comfortable. And there's very, very few of these cameras or some of that research. And clearly, Lytra last week announced one of these cameras, and I invite you to look at it if you're interested in live action. And you know, if you know the whole Oculus history, I would kind of equate the state of live action to DK1. And you need to get to the latest version to have really a sense of comfort into a live action based world. There's a bunch of technology that allows to capture real world environments. They're static, and so you can navigate through a static real world environment that exists. And then there's a different pipeline, which I like very much, called photogrammetry, where you can actually have Microsoft released technology, it's not available yet, where you have about 160 cameras that are focusing on a user, and it generates basically a 3D model of that user with the mesh along with the textures that you can insert into a 3D world. So that gives you really high fidelity photoreal performance within a real-time game engine which drives VR. And so you have all of the benefits of video and photorealism of a performer, yet all of the benefits of a virtual world that's real-time rendered, 6 degrees of freedom. You could walk around the performance. So I think that's a very interesting path as well. In the best case, in the light field array, you're still limited in that one point in space. So you may be able to move your face, maybe 50 centimeters in each direction at most, but you can't really travel. Now that's going to change. I'm sure at some point we'll be able to capture the entire point cloud of a video of an environment, and you'll be able to traverse that in real time. But that's quite far away, and it's lots of data.
We have a few minutes left, so I think we've sparked a conversation, I hope. If you guys want to get involved with this, yeah.
Can you talk about some
Wait for the microphone so that they can record it.
Can you talk about some of the technologies that are on the horizon, like Magic Leap or HoloLens?
Sure.
And what you see for those?
I can kick it off, or you can.
I would say that AR is very exciting, but there's a lot of technical hurdle to AR being widely adopted. A lot of these hurdles are going to be solved in VR, and additional hurdles need to be solved in the AR world. Clearly,
So explain what AR, just in case anybody doesn't know what AR is.
augmented reality.
So you're looking through a pair of glasses into the real world, and they're putting a virtual image on top of the real world.
Correct. You're overlaying computer graphics inside the real world. The state of the art in AR right now, like the HoloLens, is extremely small field of view. It's 30 odd degrees field of view, right? Versus the compelling element of presence is this ultra wide immersive field of view. So the form factor, the field of view is going to lend itself to certain types of application. I happen to think that there's amazing application for the HoloLens for training and industrial applications, medical applications, but I don't really see someone playing Minecraft with the HoloLens the way it was actually displayed. I think you're going to need to...
The demos are overselling it, aren't
Yeah,
they?
clearly, yeah, because you're seeing the entire world, from a third-party perspective, but really, as a first person, you only see, this little thing here. So you're going to need to really cross a number of technology barriers before you can actually have AR as a consumer device that's widely adopted. It's going to be a huge business, but it's going to come after VR. So that's my take on this.
Yeah, and I agree. Explain it well. Anyone? And then we'll get to you.
You guys were talking about adoption for this and kind of the possibilities for where it's going to go. I think you're right, 3D rendered is going to give you more possibilities than live action. We're playing around with live action a lot because I saw this and said, this live action video, you don't even have to have a headset. You were just holding your phone up and looking into a window in the world. And I feel like that becomes a really big on-ramp for people to start to use this. Because then they first look at it like this, and then eventually they'll put it into their headset, and then at that point, maybe they start going deeper. Do you guys kind of agree with that? It also means you don't have to have a controller, which if you're mass market.
I think there's a very large business for live action VR. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah. My friend runs innovation at the Golden State Warriors. They sell hundreds of thousands of jerseys to Chinese people. They're putting live 360 or 180 degree cameras on courtside, and they're going to sell access to those cameras over in China, and it's going to be a sizable business.
They even have kiosks in all of the shopping centers in China so that you can watch it.
Yeah. And at the IndyCar race, I saw cameras that do 180 degrees. Peterson Automotive Museum that's being built in Los Angeles. When you walk in, there's going to be a VR display that goes halfway around as you walk in, and it's done with 10 GoPro cameras that they are stitching together. So there's a lot of innovation, a lot of things coming. I like live action because I want to take you into Coachella, into the middle of the Sahara tent, and the only way I'm going to be able to do that is with a live action GoPro camera setup, right?
I mean, we have to be realistic about this thing, right? I mean, there's a long tail to this thing. We're building this thing for actually the next generation. I have a 7-year-old daughter, and she doesn't actually, her view of content is going to be completely different than ours. And so we can't imagine what we're trying to build for now. We have to be imagining what we're building for the future. It's funny, when she was 2, she would literally walk up to the TV and start doing this, right? like it can actually, like it's the phone. My 2-year-old he looks at a phone and just starts looking around like this, like expecting to look around, right? And so there's billions of people that have smartphones. So that is the on-ramp. Down the road, there will be opportunities to walk around physical objects and those types of things. But there's a very long horizon to this thing. Yeah. It actually requires a strong collaboration between creative and innovation.
Yeah. Philip Rosedale, who built Second Life, told me he way underestimated the long term of the web and way overestimated the short term. And he said people are going to do the same thing with VR. The short term, the next 18 months, is going to seem slow because how many people can get that 15-minute demo to turn into a raving lunatic like I am about this stuff, right? And maybe that number is 400,000 people. Maybe it's 100,000 people, but it's a finite number of people in the first year, right? But long term, that number is going to double every few months, and it's going to go crazy at some point.
Things haven't even been invented yet, like haptic response. Like, how do you actually control something from within a virtual environment? There's still people working on that. I mean, sure, you can have these
This
wacky
table stops
controllers,
my hand, right? It doesn't stop my hand in virtual reality.
Right. So haptic response, user authentication, social engagement. None of that stuff's kind of anybody's thinking about right now, or they're thinking about it, or you're actually in the audience right now thinking about it.
Yeah.
Right? So.
And kind of to the flip side of what you're talking about, the one thing that we realized as we were building this app, we built it for the Gear VR, we built it for the Galaxy Note 4, is that, now it's on other platforms, but we know full well that what we built is going to be obsolete very quickly. Mm-hmm. This was really kind of a one-shot opportunity for us to, see what kind of quick hit we could get out of it and what kind of tail would come of it. And that's why we were so excited to be able to get this on YouTube now that YouTube is cardboard enabled, because we have the opportunity, a lot of people don't have this tech yet in their homes. Yeah. We want to reach as many people as we possibly can, and so we're excited to go where people are right now. And right now that's, people who have the Gear VR, it's people who have a cardboard or even don't have a cardboard because we have it in 360 on YouTube. Where it really, I think, depends also what you want to achieve and how quickly you want to reach people who aren't the early adopters.
I'll actually flip that on you and say it's not just 18 months because the content itself has a long tail, Because think about it. SpongeBob is not in 360. There's the entire libraries of all video are not 360. Yep. Everything has to be reshot.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
everything. If
you don't need
you
to
wanted to recreate
everything.
that, right?
You don't need to reshoot it. You're going to have new entertainment styles.
That's right.
And new stars and new distribution companies and new brands that come along. I talked to Discovery Channel last week, and they're investing in a new 360 channel like they did for HD. Remember, they did the first HD video channels, and that's what got us all to buy the HD TVs. And it's coming along.
Yeah.
I think it's important to note that this is a new medium, so you can't just take existing content and convert that to VR. It doesn't work with games. It doesn't work with movies. It doesn't work with it really, you have to think about how to use that medium.
I know, but what I'm trying to do is describe that fundamental brands and franchises that are known have to reinvent themselves using the new medium.
Yeah.
Right? So.
Yeah, even Call of Duty has to be re-engineered.
Call of Duty, everything, right?
Listen, everyone right now is experimenting, and you're absolutely correct. Filmmakers are experimenting the visual grammar on how to tell a story.
And the interactive grammar, because Ted Shilowitz showed me a movie where the movie's actors changed their behavior based on where you looked. Right? We don't have movies like that. Movies we watch are from start to finish, and we don't think of the movies
I'll
changing
tell you-
based on
I'll tell
I'm
you a
looking
story
at that
about-
guy and he's going to start speaking, right?
So Oculus Story Studio, for example, is doing experimentation on how to tell a story using computer-generated content, right? And the interesting part about one of the things they found out is that the length of these experiences is not fixed. The length is variable. And why is it variable? It's because we want to tell a story. So we're going to wait until you look in the direction we want you to wait to actually trigger that action, right? So there's certain rules that are changing because of the context of storytelling and the fact that we want to get your attention. So there's audio cues, visual cues, timing, weight, all these different things are now built into these experiences in order to carry the story.
So we have a few guests who are going to come up. Let's take a couple more questions, then we have to get the guests up here to show you some cool stuff or talk to you about
Awesome
some stuff.
Hey, I'm Jason Aswar.
Hey, how are you
Also did VR 20 years ago, and loved it, and then it crashed. And then I was in gaming for the next while, which is kind of where real-time 3D went. Now I'm working with a couple of awesome folks, Tim Quirk, who's at Google Music, and Brian Calhoun. And we're building a platform that lets artists take their album and turn it into an app. But because we build it on real-time 3D tech, we also have the capability for 3D video, 360 video, that is to say, and real-time graphic stuff. And so the way we're looking at it is, how do we service the needs of content creators and artists who are going to be both producing the traditional method and are bridging into this new way? And so that's kind of the question I'm putting to the panel. Like, as you guys are working in this space, what do you see as like the biggest needs and like the best way for folks who are like in our position to help address those needs?
So I use the Unreal Engine, which is the high-end authoring tool for VR right now. It used to be very expensive to license, and in March, roughly, they made it free, 5% of the revenue. Since March, there's about 1 million people who downloaded the Unreal Engine. So a lot of people are, amateurs or professionals learning that tool. I think what we need to add as a value in a distribution platform is essentially removing the barriers of entry, providing what I like to call Lego blocks that you could bring without really even understanding an engine like Unreal. Like, a lot of people are going to learn, and it's going to be awesome, and they're going to create content and contribute in more meaningful ways, but we want to have a lower barrier of entry. And I think that's what's going to really enlist musicians and artists and DJs to actually contribute to the VR revolution, is when the barriers of entry is dramatically lowered. And so that could happen in many different ways. So that's my take on this.
I think for you, you should be thinking about reinventing economic models for your artists, right? And also interesting go-to-market models, effectively growth hacking it. Because what I'm hearing you saying is that you want to create, allow artists to become brands of their own and drive revenue. And so you fundamentally need to look at the economic models of how all of the players get, same money, just got to get divided up in new ways, in different ways, right? And then how you can affect growth of that.
I think we have 2 or 3 guests, right? Raise your hands if you're one of my guests. Come on up and grab a microphone.
There's spots over here.
Oh, that's true.
There's 2 over here, Rob.
Oh, go ahead over there, yeah. And introduce yourself and what are you doing in the VR space? Yeah.
Hello everyone, my name is Jason, and I'm in the founding team and head business development for Innerspace VR. And we're doing a music VR experience. You can think of it like Minecraft meets Guitar Hero in VR. So you get to create your own tracks and share it with friends. We have a demo right outside, so you can come and check it out. And it's called Playhead.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Cool. I'm Derek Brinkman, and I'm the CEO of Sphere VR. Sphere VR is a full-service VR studio. Our focus is really about making VR live action accessible, both to people who have great content to put out there and also to the consumers for it. So, I had asked that question about onboarding people. We definitely see live action as being a great onboard, a lot of mobile-focused stuff. So some of the first items that we've done, we're doing a Joan Jett live action app that's going to have a combination of concert footage and also behind the scenes. One of the greatest things about some of the VR live action video that we can create is that it gives you access to places that you would otherwise never have access to go. We kind of look at it like we invented a teleporter, but it doesn't work the way that we thought it would in Star Trek. We're teleporting experiences to you rather than teleporting you to experiences. So that's our focus.
Very cool. Cool. Yeah.
Sorry, hi, I'm Alex Chung. I'm with Vantage TV, and we are focused on bringing great VR live events to fans. And so what we want to do is really enable fans, whether they're at the event or they're not able to attend the event, with VR to gain better access. So for people that are at the event, can we give them that best in the seat, best house in the seat experience? So that they can feel like they were actually in the front row. And then for people that weren't able to attend the event for a variety of reasons, it cost too much, the timing of the concert, the location of the concert wasn't in their area, they have kids, maybe they're young and they can't afford it. Can we enable them to enjoy these events in an immersive way with their friends in a very social way? So we're enabling people to watch concerts and actually be able to chat with each other, up to 10 people in a group, and actually enjoy the concert together, as well as other social features that we're working on. We came out of stealth mode about 4 months ago, and we have done live streaming at music events at Austin City Limits, Lollapalooza, and Outside Lands, and we're working on our consumer-facing app, which will be coming out in December. And we're doing demos as well outside.
Very cool. To the three newcomers, did we not cover something that we should cover in the last few minutes?
I'd say one thing that I found, because we've given thousands of demos to users, and I get a question once in a while where people say, well, 3D TVs seemed like it was a big push and a hot button a while ago. What's so different about VR and 3D TVs? And I'd say the big difference is that what I found and what we've experienced is that 3D TVs seem to be pushed more by OEM manufacturers and figuring out new reasons to buy a new TV, whereas what we're experiencing is the people that experience VR love it. And it's overwhelming how excited they are for this experience, and they're craving content right now. And so I think, being in the space right now, there's the advantage to look at the market that's very early and capitalize on that. Because right now, quite honestly, the bar is probably fairly low in terms of the experience that people are expecting, but that will change as the technology advances and people build better and better experiences.
I totally agree with the 3D TV piece, where it didn't really change any of the content, and it didn't really change the experience that people have. And then now VR, it's completely changing the way that people are processing that experience that they have, and it's going to change the way that storytelling is done. To your point around, interactive storytelling and multi-threaded storytelling that happens.
Yeah.
I would say I'm really super excited about the collaboration between LA and San Francisco. So the innovation and the creative, doing this stuff that you're doing, Laurent, is awesome. We've talked about working together, so let's make that happen.
Actually, we are.
Yeah. Yes.
You guys are using my tech in France.
So yeah, I'm super excited about that, and I think it's just going to continue to happen more and more, and it's going to be great times. Exciting.
Any other questions? You. Right, both of you.
Okay, cool. Hi. I'm Ellie Lassick. Hey, Robert.
Hi there.
So in general, we talked about the lawn tail camera technology. So Chelsea, what cameras were you guys using?
We used, we contracted a company called Secret Location, who was fantastic, and we really enjoyed working with them. And they actually did all of that production for us. I believe what they were using, and you actually spoke with them, so you might actually know in more detail what they were using, but it was this crazy GoPro rig that I believe they custom made themselves.
Yeah. How many cameras did it have? Do you remember? Was it 6 or 15? Yeah.
I think it was 8.
It was 8.
360 Heroes or something.
Yeah,
Like
yeah. I have a Freedom 360 3D printed rig that costs about $700, and then you get 6 cameras, which is $3,000. And then you get color software to stitch the cameras together, which is almost $1,000. GoPro just bought that company. And then you have to have a monopod or two, and you have to have batteries, and you have to have battery chargers because you have to charge 6 GoPros without taking them out of the rig. So I spent so far about $5,500, and that's a pretty mid-end camera. Now the camera prices are about to go down because Sphericam is coming out with one for $1,500. And Ricoh Theta on the low end is under $500 with 2 lenses, and GoPro is coming out with 2 cameras in the next 6 months. One that has 2 cameras, one that has 1 chip, and then the big one that has 18 lenses. I think they even added a new 6-camera one that they're working on too. So there's about to be a onslaught of new cameras coming out. On the high end, we should talk about that Lytro a little bit more.
By the way, Secret Location won the first Emmy
They did?
for VR.
It wasn't for ours, but we're waiting to win a whole bunch of stuff for our thing with them too.
The point is, like, clearly we still haven't found one ubiquitous platform or
No.
camera that enables, I mean, it's
And
kind of crazy, right?
every
Thank you.
month, literally, there's a new camera. I mean, in the last 2 weeks, we've seen Jaunt announce a new camera and Lytro. Lytro, for those who don't know, Lytro came out of Stanford University, and the DARPA project that they were trying to solve was they wanted to see through bushes. And they built a grid of cameras and algorithms to join those grids of cameras to see through the little light pokes that are coming through a bush. And then they shrunk that down and they put little grids on top of sensors. And so they're capturing all the light that's coming off of the world into this camera with a bunch of sensors with these little lenses, micro lenses on top of the sensors that split the rays into different pixels. And so by turning on and off those pixels with a computer, you can change focus, you can change 3D, you can change all sorts of stuff, and you can build a 3D model of the world, right?
So Robert, being part of a hard drive company, we like more data coming through.
There's a
right?
shitload of data
Shitload
coming
of
off
data.
that Lytro.
So there's also interesting, there's almost 3 parts of it. There's the sensor side of it, and there's innovation happening on the sensor side that allow you to do things like, aperture kind of sensing, but then there's also full Z-depth sensing chips that are kind of being worked on right now.
Yeah.
Then there's the lens technology itself that allow you to actually get 360. And then how do you actually get multiple sensors to actually, or can you use one sensor? So there's all that stuff happening. And then how much can you offload off of the computer and the processing to actually get the data, stitch it together live, and then get it out of the device.
Yeah.
So all of that stuff, each individual component is being, there's innovation that's happening across all 3 of those. And then there's some early stuff, like the Lytro is still early, like kind of to your point, you said that it's kind of DK1 phase, but there's other stuff down the road. And again, this is 5-6 year arcs to this stuff, right?
Yeah.
So that's kind of what's happening.
We're at the very beginning.
Yeah, I mean, I want to capture 1 terabyte per frame, that's 60 frames. So that's
keep
what I
in
care
mind,
about.
At Coachella last year, there was 2 360 cameras. I had one of them.
Right.
Out of 200,000 people. That ain't going to be the same next year.
No, I want to create a different problem.
So, I think for Vantage, we try to take a different view on the market, and even though there's fantastic technology that's out there that's being developed, that's being mentioned here, right now we're looking for ways that we can make live events, especially long-form content in VR, accessible and ROI positive today for artists and promoters. And so for us, we're taking maybe a more humble view on kind of what technology we can use by leveraging existing 2D cameras that are in market. Right now, at this point, we're not doing stereoscopic because we're kind of weighing for what we're trying to do. Do we go for better resolution or do we need 360? Do we need stereoscopic? And right now we're finding from user feedback that leveraging existing 2D UHD cameras that are available in market is working out pretty well so far, but certainly as the capture equipment, both on the hardware side and the software side, improves, we'll be looking forward to that as well.
We find the same thing, that most of the people that look at the content that we're creating prefer to look at it in 2D rather than stereoscopic. And I think stereoscopic is going to improve over time, and it'll look less like a trick. Right now, it just kind of looks like a trick. You don't really get immersed into that world. But it'll be interesting when the cameras and the software really start to meld together, and it stops becoming a decision of, oh, which cameras am I going to use, and then what's the stitching software that I'm going to use, and it's one, nice bundle that comes together, and Google's doing that, Jaunt's doing that, all of these companies are doing it. So I think that's going to also result in a lot of creatives having a lot more accessibility to it. I mean, our company is a combination of a documentary filmmaker, myself that comes from the tech world and product development for mobile applications, and an entertainment executive. And you kind of have to have all of those pieces right now. Probably in another year and a half, 2 years, you don't need to have someone who's quite as technical there, and it'll be the creatives who can run with it on their own.
Here first.
So this has been really
Picture?
interesting and enlightening. But one thing has surprised me. As we talk about content and innovation, no one has mentioned porn.
That's a different conference.
We actually did talk about that.
We did.
We did talk about that.
We talk about sex and robots in Half Moon Bay at the Ritz every Friday night, because me and Andy is my best friend. He was one of the 12 guys who built the iPhone, and we talk about it all the time. But that's probably a different conference.
But that's really a serious question,
Yeah, I
because
know.
I've worked with another agency when they were doing research, how to do it really cheap. They looked at porn.
Yeah.
And it made their research kind of weird at work, but it worked because they figured out how to do it cheaply. So have you guys worked with anyone that you can talk about, or seen any insights from that industry?
They're all playing with the same exact tools that we've been talking about. So multiple GoPros in a little ball, 3D printed forms. We're waiting for the good cameras to come along.
I know some guys that are scanning some porn models right now, and modeling applications. I don't know a whole lot of guys in that industry, but I know probably 3 or 4 that are starting projects around VR porn. Some are video based, and some are CG with full capture. But I haven't seen end products just yet.
Yeah. This is also one of those that, content creation is being disrupted. So, I mean, I'll go there, which is like line of sight shooting is very different than full 360. Yeah. So now all of a sudden, what are you writing for? And, so now all of a sudden content creation, the storytelling aspect or whatever you're shooting actually has to be thought of.
No,
right? I mean, if you're going to watch a screen, it's going to be here.
If we flip into the other conference, they're thinking about how to use sensors, because when you talk about porn, you're talking about touch and haptics and teledildonics and all sorts of fun things.
That's a new word for everyone here.
Look it up on Google. You'll find a whole bunch about it. But let's go back to VR.
After 5 p.m., isn't it?
So coming back to music
VR
and technology, you guys have spoken a lot about virtual reality, about the technology, about some of the ways in which you're using it. But speaking to a room that presumably has, record label executives and or publishers or people from the rights management community, what has your experience been, maybe for some of you that are working in music and capturing live content or creating, content or capturing B-roll or unique experiences around music? What's the experience been working with the industry? What is the knowledge base of the rights holders as far as it pertains to VR? You speak about people that have a perception of VR before they've tried it, and an experiential then perception post having actually experienced the technology. Yeah. Are you walking into licensing conversations are these looking much like a DVD hybrid between what one would license a DVD and then with sort of an app layer over that, where there's a rev share beyond just the traditional, two-dimensional video. And then as you get into capturing live content, you're talking about being at Coachella, right? You've got Golden Voice and AEG to deal with. You've got presumably dozens of music publishers, if not hundreds. You've got master rights holders that, although you're not essentially using the masters they've created, you are potentially infringing upon their exclusive agreements with those recording artists. So you now have
And
potentially, YouTube has the exclusive
exclusivity.
right to distribute at
Now,
some
they
of
didn't
these
let me
festivals.
jack into the soundboard.
Yeah. So
They did let me carry the camera in. I got permission to do that, but
Yeah.
they didn't give me permission to jack into the soundboard because that's YouTube. YouTube
yeah,
owns
so
that.
YouTube has bought those rights, right?
Yeah.
So you're now potentially dealing with what is the most arduous and complicated and to put it lightly, very sort of too many chefs in the kitchen type of arrangement. How are you guys dealing with that? What's your experience been dealing with the industry? How are you
I'll kick
overcoming
it off because I was just hanging out with some of the top music executives at Live in the at Live in the Vineyard with Claire Parr, and they're all very interested. They're going to treat it probably like they treat video rights, but again, there's conflicts there, right? Because Golden Voice has already given away the video rights or sold the video rights to YouTube, and now I come in with my camera, and it's like, oh, wait a second, that's video.
Across the country, they're going to charge initiation or origination fees or.
Yeah, but they're going to be treating it like they do with the video rights, like YouTube, because it's going to be on YouTube, it's going to be on Facebook, right? That's how you're going to distribute these things. So they're very interested in this, and they want. The high-end ones want to protect the ability to have a subscription model because the Taylor Swifts and those people realize this is a new platform coming that's going to be very interesting to their fans, and they want to monetize it differently than YouTube. So there'll be some resistance from some of the higher-end ones for sure.
I mean, to your point, this is an opportunity to treat some of this content as premium and rewrite the rules from the beginning. So this could get bloody, actually, primarily because all of the stakeholders that you just described have a lot of influence. And then you throw in brand activation in the middle of it, then all of a sudden, now who actually owns the rights of content? And when you get content distribution networks trying to also own the rights to just the sound feeds, but not the video feeds, now all of a sudden that gets interesting too. So I have a feeling this could get pretty ugly pretty quickly. That's why, it all relies on the use of content after the fact. If you start with the notion of having this type of content used as promotional or market-driven to try to create user or community engagement, that's one thing. If you start to try to create premium services or content where you're driving revenue and new business models, it's a whole different thing.
Yeah, and most of the businesses that have tried this in some form or fashion, be it through app distribution or through, dating years ago, not VR specifically, but just the capture and distribution of live content. The reason it works for YouTube is because they're YouTube and because they have the financial backing of Google and the distribution of, of billions of people. So they can go in and solve a lot of the problems with all the various stakeholders because they have the financial means and the distribution, and it's easy to say, oh yeah, Google, people will go on YouTube and watch. If you're a startup in this space, I just am curious for you guys how you're tackling that.
With your YouTube comment, though, I'm seeing a quiet kind of like groundswell of people who are starting to hate YouTube, primarily because there's video of cats up there, and then there's merged with premium content. So there's a lot of there's kind of a
but
quiet.
no one
That's
else
the
in-
biggest distribution.
Yeah,
of
no one
video.
else. No one else in the room can put Coachella on their front page and have the magnitude,
No
or
question.
volume of influence that YouTube has.
Yeah,
I
I
think
don't.
that's a fact.
I don't see people hating YouTube. I see people. YouTube has the biggest audience that there is, so it's an excellent opportunity.
That
to
is the
distribute
perspective of Silicon
content.
Valley, right? I agree with that. But
Well,
when you go down,
It wouldn't have a
and-
big audience if people hated it.
No, I'm not debating. I'm just sharing with you what we're hearing, across everything, right? So I spoke at Digital Hollywood 2 weeks ago, and there's a lot of people down there that fundamentally, Yeah, and that's why I'm saying there's an
I
epic
thought you were
battle.
talking about the audience.
No, no, no. I'm
Oh,
talking about an
okay.
epic. There's an epic battle between Hollywood and Silicon Valley right now, right? Around content and rights and revenue and rev share and licensing.
Yeah, I mean, we're right in the middle of that right now. We've had a lot of interest of different artists who have come to us and said, why don't we collaborate musically, and then we can do something, amazing. And the conversation is, do we do a joint venture? Do we do a licensing thing where people download your song for 99 cents within the experience? All of that is, we're battling it out as it is. So we have no idea how it's going to turn out. But
So we're already 6 minutes over time, right? Yeah.
I was actually curious to hear from you, because you guys, it sounds like.
Can we have one last question, one last answer, and then we'll be around. So this will be a multi-year conversation between all of us for sure.
So just really quickly for Vantage, I mean, we've been lucky enough to work in close conjunction at the events with Samsung, which has been a major sponsor that has had certain rights access to live stream the event, as well as working in conjunction with C3 Presents. In terms of like VOD, I think you're right. I think it is complex. I think that YouTube, the way that I hopefully view YouTube in the future is that it's a fantastic marketing channel to let people know that this VR content, it exists. But hopefully there'll be better channels like Vantage where artists and promoters and labels can monetize the content better and be treated more like a premium piece of content.
And turn it into branded content so that you're doing a deal with a brand and putting those two things together, putting it out there onto a YouTube, not trying to ask the consumer to pay for it.
Coalescing all the rights holders around something they're all interested in. Money.
Yeah, exactly. Because then they know what they're going to get paid up front too. Because one of the biggest problems is trying to have that conversation when nobody knows what the real market viability is.
And I think Advantage, what we're trying to do is create a platform where we build an audience over time of fans that love different artists. And so the next time you're coming out with a content piece, you've got a better channel to leverage for community. So that's our goal.